one of our Parent 24 contributors. Terri is joining me in studio. Now, she's an adoptive mom and counsellor, and on Google Hangout we have Saskia joining us. She's from IFASA and is also an adoptive mom. We're going to talk about the adoption process here in South Africa and what you should consider if you are thinking about adoption. So I would like to welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to start with you, Terri. Can you tell me a little bit about your story, your adoption story, how it all began, and briefly take us through it?
Sure. I spent about 5 or 6 years doing various fertility treatments before a friend of mine said, stop that immediately and go for adoption. And I didn't know anything about it at all, and started to sort of look into it on the internet, but there was really not much there. And it was quite a difficult process for me to find out how to adopt. I did, and I then subsequently adopted. And then I wrote a little children's storybook about adoption. And from that, many people started to contact me and say, well, you've done it, how does it work? And I sort of became an inadvertent counsellor, and then I actually ended up going and studying formally to be a counsellor. And so now I work with people who are hoping to adopt and just help them through the process.
Okay, wow. And Saskia, can you tell us briefly your story, just so we have a foundation for our discussion?
Sure. Like Terri, I also did a lot of infertility treatment, but previous to that, my husband and I had always been open to adoption. My best friends adopted, so growing up it was normal, it was fine. She had a lovely upbringing, her parents were divine. So we always actually meant to adopt, however it was supposed to come after our biological child, but that never happened. But thanks to Terri and to Sharon, Trinity Heart, there's plenty of information now out there about adoption, so it was much easier for us going into it because of what they've done. In fact, I think I was actually on her website because it is encouraged to try and find yourself a birth parent because there's not so many, especially we were looking for a Caucasian child. So it was much easier for us because there's a lot of info out there on how to do it. We actually started the adoption procedure in England because we lived there. In South Africa, the procedures actually, they have a much better balance between digging into your history and finding out about you as a person. So it was a very good experience. We weren't on the list long. We were on for 13 months, and it was, from start to finish, it wasn't hectic. It was good, especially after all the treatments.
Now, you both mentioned that you were on fertility drugs for a while before you considered adoption. Now, Terri, when you were on those fertility drugs and then you realized, okay, I'm going to go for adoption, what did it feel like to think that you weren't going to have a biological child?
I try to think about that quite a lot. For me, I don't think it really mattered. I think for me the biggest thing was that you grow up assuming that one day you'll have a child because that's how nature works. So it's not really a conscious thought. And when a doctor stands in front of you and says, you're not going to have a child, you have to actually rewire everything. It's a surprise. And once I sort of got my head around it and somebody said, look, adoption is an option, and I thought, that's great. My yearning wasn't ever to carry a child particularly. Mine was to be a mom. But I do know that there are people out there who have adopted and who love their children more than life itself. But that yearning and that pain of not ever having carried and birthed a child is still great. For me, I'm fortunate. I've watched my sister give birth, and quite frankly, I'm pretty glad I did it the way I did it.
And Saskia, did you have the same experience?
It was, the biological link wasn't important to me. I worried more that it would be more important to my family members. My sister has a daughter and a son. So my worry was that how could they possibly love a child that's not biologically related to them? That was a worry I lived with until such time as he actually came along, and now I see that it doesn't matter. They love him just the same for himself, which he is. So that was my worry a lot. Carrying a child, I had a loss at 24 weeks. So I did experience being pregnant, and it was something that I had yearned for. I mean, it's supposedly every woman's right. So I have, experienced it as well as, but I wouldn't need to go through it again. If I had to change anything, I probably wouldn't have done the final treatment that we did and gone straight for adoption.